I know a lot of people out there don't really like the weird kissed ripoffs that they did when they let Ace Frehley have his own record and they let Gene Simmons do his thing and Paul Stanley. But listen, if you don't like Ace Frehley, there's one song that I really do like from that guy, and it's I'm back in the New York groove, and we have to pit Daniel Pineda. He's back in the New York groove. He's been away for 6 years. He's taken on Blaze, Herbert Burns, and I'm really excited for this fight because a lot of people might be familiar with Daniel Pineda. Like I said, it's been 6 years away. He's had stints with LFA. He was an LFA featherweight champ way back in the day. Bellator bounced around, LFA again, the PFL, we've seen him here recently. We're going to talk about that one a little bit later on. But this is a guy, if you look at his record, 26-13, you might think, well, that's a little salty. But if you look at it for what it's worth, all of his 26 wins are by finish and 18 of them by submission. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. His first rip through in the UFC didn't go all that well. I mean, quite a few more losses than wins, and that's why he wasn't there long term. But it's really interesting how his time went with the PFL because he entered into last season, the quarterfinals of the season, and he took on a tough out. He took on Junior Bacon Cheeseburger, JBC, Jeremy Kennedy. And we talk about him all the time, but he fought Jeremy Kennedy, and he also fought, and it's a tough name to pronounce, Mavlidev Kaibulev. And if you're not familiar with the Russian, he had a win over Damon Jackson in that season from the regional scene that you might recognize in the States. He had a good win there. And he drew against Andre Harrison. And I get it. Andre Harrison isn't the WSOF Andre Harrison. But still, that's a quality win. He was undefeated. He was 14-0-1. Daniel Pineda went in there and finished him in the first round. Then he fought Jeremy Kennedy. Finished him in the first round. Daniel Pineda, riding high, just enters into this PFL season looking amazing.
All right, Craig.
And then tests for elevated levels of testosterone, and he was originally scheduled to take on Lance Palmer in the finals at a chance at $1 million in the title. Matchup. And Daniel Pineda had to dip out.
Yeah, so, and something that's really been a big topic of this video has been Daniel Pineda's black belt in jiu-jitsu and his ability on the mat. A lot of his submissions, when you go back and watch the fights, are due to more failed takedown attempts from a wrestler. They stick their neck out and then he gets it. Not taking anything away from Pineda, but a lot of his submissions are on the defense, where someone has taken him down and they starting to attack with different submissions. With Herbert Burns, it's a little bit different. With what we saw with Herbert in his last fight against Evan Dunham, and I understand Evan Dunham's very much over the hill, but he's a really good wrestler, so I thought that fight was somewhat interesting to see if Burns could get to what his strong suit was and take the wrestler down and really employ his jiu-jitsu game. And he took his back almost immediately on the mat, hit him with this really nice trip right into his lap, basically, and choked him out in just under 2 minutes. It was a very impressive performance, and it was from a guy, too. Herbert Burns, people forget, his first UFC fight wins by hellacious KO in the first round. Really stamps that he's not at Gilbert's level just yet, but the Burns bros, like, they mean business, and they're going to be around for a while. Here's the only thing that concerns me about Herbert Burns moving forward. He's 32 years old, and this is only his third fight in the UFC. So if he's a guy that the UFC, maybe they're not really pushing him a lot, but they do seem to give him, they put him on bigger cards for the most part. They know he's an exciting fighter. But at 32 years of age, it's just a really long climb to get to the top of the division, even though I think he has some of the skill sets to actually go on a decent run in the lightweight division. Again, the age worries me a little bit. Daniel Pineda, I just don't know what he does better than Herbert Burns. Because when you do talk about his grappling ability, you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but you're fighting a guy who is a multiple-time black belt in jiu-jitsu, who's entered crazy tournaments. Like, the Burns brothers, when it comes to just pure grappling, you need more than a black belt just to keep up with them. So I don't think Herbert's that much of a threat on the mat. And on the feet, Burns isn't the most dynamic striker by any means, but he's a guy who's very heavy-handed in all the techniques that he throws. So unless you're just going to be able to take him down and smother him and be that good of a wrestler on top to not even give him space to move or create space off of his back, I just don't see how you're going to be able to get the win until he starts fighting some of those upper echelon guys.
And we've seen him fight wrestlers in his last two fights. I mean, Nate Landwehr is the classic example of a wrestle boxer, and for Evan Dunham, pretty well the same thing. So now you get a little bit of a change from that mold. You get Daniel Pineda, a little bit more of a Swiss Army knife. Yeah. Again, we know that he could go to the well, he could look for the submissions, but Herbert Burns, and you can see it on the screen, you can't always take height and reach into total account because those numbers, it's what you get on the Tapology, Sherdog, UFC.com. We kind of take everything together, not average it out. Whatever the majority's saying, we'll go with it. But you never know. But Herbert Burns, so far from what we've seen at 45 or at a catch weight of 50, is he's normally the bigger guy in the cage. And it's one of those things where you said his striking's not super dynamic. It's not super crisp. He's not going out there and throwing, a 3-punch combo and ending it with a leg kick. he's going out there and landing the looping shots that you'd see a grappler do, but there is a lot of power on them. It sets up his submission abilities. His takedowns are quite good. It's one of those fights where, if you can hear it, I'm kind of edging on the side of Herbert Burns. Now, I will say the odds -260 Burns, plus 210 in the long-awaited return of Daniel Pineda over on Tapology to 271 votes. 95% going with Burns, 80% going with Burns by submission. I could see it. But man, it is a tough hill to climb in Daniel Pineda.
It really is. Again, you're asking a guy who's primarily a grappler, who's a very good grappler, to fight a great grappler, and a guy who has a very extensive lineage behind him too. I just don't really see how Herbert Burns gets the loss in this. I do agree with the odds too. They do seem about right. Sometimes when you have a guy who's been in the UFC for a couple of fights fighting a guy who's a newcomer, the odds will be just outrageous, and they'll have Herbert at like a -360 or something. So I'm not really too crazy with the odds. I think they're good, and I think Herbert Burns can be able to get done. Maybe not by submission, because I do think Pineda, it's not like he's going to be easy to submit. All I'm saying is that Pineda won't submit Herbert Burns. Is the only thing I can guarantee you about this fight. So I'm going to say Herbert Burns, probably by stoppage, but that's all I can really say.
I'm really looking forward to this one. We're both in agreement. We're going to go with Herbert Burns here. I think, again, it's just the pressure. It's the size. It's going to wear on Pineda. But again, he's proven people wrong. He went on an awesome run with the PFL. Just that elevated level of testosterone saw him out. So I'm looking forward to this one. We're looking forward to the entire card. We get 12 fights, including GOAT status. And our main event, we get an extended preview of Miocic Cormier 3. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. And as we always say, let's get into it.